Well, it seems as though for several months now there had been intense negotiations between, on one hand, the Department of Justice in the United States and Huawei to find some sort of deal about Meng Wanzhou's extradition towards the United States on these bank fraud charges. And the deal that they struck just a few hours ago to release Meng Wanzhou was what's called a deferred prosecution agreement, which basically allowed Meng Wanzhou to return to China and for charges against her to be suspended until the end of 2022, when they will be eventually dropped. Now, as part of that deferred prosecution agreement, Meng Wanzhou had to write a statement of facts saying that she willingly transmitted false information to HSBC back a few years ago about the nature of the relationship between Huawei and Skycom, an Iranian-based telecoms company that the United States believes was actually controlled entirely by Huawei and thus was in violation of U.S. sanctions towards Iran. She was also, as part of that deferred prosecution agreement, she will continue to say that she is not guilty of charges of fraud and conspiracy. So the legal proceedings against Huawei will continue, but it seems that the legal proceedings against Meng Wanzhou, its chief financial officer, won't, and that seems to be the agreement that's been found so that both sides here, the United States and China and Meng Wanzhou, can continue to save face. And this is possibly what was behind the liberation, more than possibly what was behind the liberation, the release of the two Michaels here in China.
And Charles, do we know anything more about the terms of the release of those two Canadians?
Well, when Justin Trudeau announced it a few hours ago, he said that the details about the sequence of events that led to their release would be revealed in time, but not immediately. China has not communicated at all about the release of the two Canadians. The first wire from China's new press agency, Xinhua, about these events that we've seen unfold over the course of the last few hours just mentions that Meng Wanzhou has been released and is heading back to, quote, the motherland, thanks to, again, quote, unquote, the unremitting efforts of the Chinese government. But clearly it seems that there's a clear parallel between the fate of the two Michaels on one hand and Meng Wanzhou on the other. They were arrested just 9 days after Meng Wanzhou was arrested at Vancouver Airport on December 2018. And after that, over the 1,000 days of their detention, their legal proceedings in China seem to have mirrored very closely the legal proceedings that followed Meng Wanzhou's extradition process in Vancouver. And actually, a few months ago, Michael Spavor's verdict was announced. He was condemned. He was given a sentence of 11 years in prison and also of deportation that was, and it was unspecified when that deportation would apply. So perhaps what we're seeing now is Michael Spavor's deportation being triggered. Michael Kovrig's verdict has never been announced, by the way, so it's not clear under what legal proceedings this is taking place. But really, this shows that China has clearly engaged in a form of hostage diplomacy, and it can be argued that this has worked. They managed to get Meng Wanzhou out of this extradition proceedings towards the United States.
And Charles, this case has been a source of real tension, of course, between China and the US, also between China and Canada. Do these latest developments spell something of a thawing of relations, or is it simply too early to tell?
It's probably too early to tell, but it does show that there is a difference in approach here between the Biden administration and the Trump administration, under which the arrest of Meng Wanzhou took place in Vancouver. Joe Biden probably eager to rekindle his relationship with the Canadian government over this issue, because this really put Ottawa in a tight spot with its citizens being taken hostage over a decision made in Washington, D.C. This was potentially a way for Washington to get rid of this thorny issue of Canada between China and the U.S. But really the issues behind this, the technological race between Washington and Beijing, of which Huawei is like a tech champion, this will continue. And even the relationship between Canada and China will continue to be extremely cold. I mean, the Canadian Parliament has voted to declare the repression oppression of Uyghur Muslims and other Muslim minorities in Xinjiang as a genocide. This does not set well with Beijing. And there are other Canadians here who are in prison. There are accused of criminal charges of drug smuggling, and it could be argued by some observers that these charges are their sentences are much higher than their crime, and this is also retaliation for what Canada has done. So there's still a number of issues between Ottawa and Beijing, between Washington and Beijing, that says that the relationship is not going to thaw quite yet.
Charles Pellegrin